So picture a riverbank. It's a nice day out. The water is flowing, and you have two people trying to catch dinner.
Okay. Setting the scene.
Yeah, and on one side, you have the sportsman. He is completely decked out. I mean, he's got the imported reel, the split bamboo rod, and a tackle box full of those hand-painted artificial lures that look like little pieces of art.
Right. The kind of gear that costs an absolute fortune and looks great in a catalog.
Exactly. And he is catching absolutely nothing, just total silence on his end of the stream. But maybe 10 yards down, there's a ragged urchin, and that's the exact phrase from the text, holding a cut pole with just a piece of string tied to it.
And let me guess, the kid is pulling in fish after fish.
One after another, just reeling them in.
It's a great image.
Yeah.
It immediately sets the stage for the material we're covering in today's deep dive.
It really does, because the difference wasn't the equipment, right? The difference was that the kid dug up some worms. He offered the fish what the fish were actually eating.
While the sportsman was trying to catch them with what he thought they ought to like.
Yes.
And that right there is the core thesis of the Robert Collier letter book. It's this legendary text from 1937, and it's often called the logbook of direct mail success. That fishing analogy is the mistake 90% of people make when they try to persuade someone else to do anything at all.
And we are going to unpack exactly how to stop being that sportsman with the fancy lures and start actually catching fish.
Sounds good.
But before we get into the actual tactics, I really want to talk about the author Robert Collier, because his background is, well, it's a little strange for a marketing genius.
It's incredibly eclectic. He definitely wasn't your standard business school grad.
No, he started out studying to be a priest.
Right.
Then he does a complete 180 and becomes a mining engineer in West Virginia.
As one does.
Right. And then, and this is the part where I get a little skeptical, he apparently cures himself of a mysterious, undiagnosable illness using mind power.
I know it sounds a bit woo-woo by modern standards, but you kind of have to look at it through the lens of the new thought movement of the early 20th century. Because Collier didn't view mind power as magic. He viewed it as mechanics.
Mechanics, like an engine.
Think about his engineering background. He looked at the human mind like a machine. If you pull lever A, the machine performs action B.
So it's inputs and outputs.
Exactly. He believed there were specific psychological triggers that, if pressed correctly, would compel a person to say yes.
So it's less of a magic spell and more like psychological engineering.
That's a great way to put it. And that is our exact mission for this deep dive. We aren't looking at grammar rules today. We are looking for those levers.
I love that. Okay, let's go back to the fishing analogy. The core idea is that we are usually way too focused on our own lure. Our product, our idea, our needs.
Collier puts it very bluntly. He says, when you are writing to someone, whether it's a sales letter or just an email to your boss, you are trying to interest them in your proposition.
Right.
But they do not care about your proposition.
Because they're entirely self-absorbed.
Because they are busy. Collier says the reader is deep in a discussion with themselves.
That's such a great phrase, deep in a discussion with themselves.
Visualize it. You're walking down the street or you're scrolling on your phone. You aren't a blank slate just waiting for new input.
No, you're thinking about your grocery list or an argument you just had.
Exactly. You're thinking about your rent or what you're making for dinner. Your mind is a speeding train moving down a very specific track.
And most communication just tries to stand on the tracks and stop the train.
Which is completely suicidal. If you try to stop the train of thought, you just get run over.
Or deleted or ignored.
Right.
So how do you actually flag them down? The text mentions a wrong way to do this, which I found pretty hilarious. The fire method.
Oh, the miner in the saloon.
Yeah, please tell that story.
So Collier describes this drunken miner in the Old West who sticks his head into a crowded saloon and just screams fire at the top of his lungs.
Which definitely gets attention.
Oh, it gets everyone's attention. The place clears out instantly.
Yeah.
But did he sell anything?
No.
No. He just annoyed everyone and emptied the room.
I feel like I see the digital equivalent of this every single day.
Oh, all the time.
Like subject lines that say urgent or your account. And then you open it and it's a newsletter about socks.
That is the modern fire method. You get the open, but you completely break the trust. You derailed their train, but you didn't get them on board your train.
So what's the alternative?
Collier says you have to harmonize with their internal monologue. You basically have to run alongside the speeding train and jump on.
But that's the hard part, isn't it? I mean, how do I know what the discussion in their head actually is? I'm not a mind reader.
You don't have to be a mind reader to know the universal tracks that people run on.
Oh.
And he gives some really brilliant examples of how to harmonize with different people.
The one for the mother really stood out to me.
Right. So if you're selling a stroller, the amateur marketer starts with the wheels. Look at these durable rubber tires.
But the mother isn't walking around thinking about rubber tires.
Not at all. She's thinking about her baby's comfort. And crucially, she's thinking about how the baby is perceived by others.
The pride aspect.
Exactly. So Collier suggests starting with something like, never a child came into the world but was worthy of as good a card as any other.
It immediately validates her.
It completely aligns with her pride.
Yeah.
It says, I know you want the absolute best for this child. Boom, now you're on the train.
And there's another example for a father, too, right?
Yes, the college example.
He says you don't start by selling the college fund itself. You start with the father's fear and pride about his son growing up.
You sell the moment his son brings his new college friends home and says, this is my father, boys.
It's so emotionally targeted. He does the exact same thing for a druggist, a pharmacist. Now, this feels like a much tougher crowd because they're business owners and they're incredibly busy.
And that is exactly the discussion they are having in their heads. I am too busy.
So Collier says, do not pitch your product yet. Start by acknowledging the chaos of their day.
Right. He writes something like, after you've run up front half a dozen times to sell stamps and answered the phone to tell Mrs. Smith the price of medicine, it's pure empathy. It says, I see your reality. You aren't an interruption anymore. You're a sympathetic friend.
Okay, so we've harmonized. We are officially on the train. But just being on the train doesn't mean I'm going to buy your ticket.
Right.
I might agree with you and I might like you, but that doesn't mean I'm opening my wallet.
And this is where we hit probably the most controversial part of Collier's philosophy, at least for the highly intellectual crowd. He calls it the acquisitive feeling.
Basically, the battle between emotion and logic.
Collier is completely adamant here. He says, you can appeal to reason all you want. You can have the absolute best arguments and all the data.
Sure.
But if you actually want to sell goods, you must base your real urge upon some primary emotion.
See, I have to push back on this a little bit. We're talking about 1937, sure, but also today. If I'm buying something expensive or complex, I'm using logic, right?
You think you are.
If I'm buying a car or a piece of software or, in Collier's case, a massive set of history books, I need to know the specs.
That is exactly what the publisher of H.G. Wells's Outline of History thought, too.
This is the 4-volume set, right?
Massive set.
Mm-hmm.
A serious intellectual investment for anyone at the time. So they tried the logical pitch, the intellectual letter.
What did that look like?
It just listed the features. It said, this is the finely revised edition. It has new illustrations. It's library size. Oh, and we're offering a 25% discount.
Which is a really solid value proposition. Better product for a lower price.
And it performed okay. It was respectable. It paid the bills. But it didn't set the world on fire. Then Collier pivoted. He stopped selling the book and started selling the feeling.
I have the text of the second letter right here. It is, well, it's incredibly dramatic. It doesn't mention page counts at all. It starts talking about the life principle.
Read that part. It's fascinating.
It says the life principle that formed the dinosaur is not going to fail in your case. And then it talks about the infinite energy of the universe.
Infinite energy. Think about the context of the 1930s. The world is industrializing, things are moving so fast, and everyday people feel very small. And here comes a letter saying, if you read this history, you will tap into the cosmic power that drove the dinosaurs.
It's literally promising that reading a history book will make you a more powerful human being.
Exactly. The first letter sold history. The second letter sold future making. It sold the reader's own potential. And that letter didn't just do okay. It broke sales records.
Because it triggered that acquisitive feeling.
It bypassed the logic center entirely and went straight to the ego. I want to be powerful. I want to understand the universe. That is a much stronger driver than I want a 25% discount.
There is another example of this that's even more stark. The story of A.L. Pelton.
Oh, the Power of Will story. This is an absolute classic.
So Pelton is a young bookkeeper. He's not a rich man. And he buys the rights to a book called Power of Will that had completely flopped.
Right, because the original publisher marketed it as a serious academic study.
Which is boring. Who wants to sit down and study their own will? So Pelton had $200 to his name. He spends it all on an ad campaign that frames the book completely differently. He makes it entirely about ambition.
He basically told people, this book is the secret weapon to get rich, to dominate your enemies, and rule your destiny.
And I turned that $200 into $2,000 almost immediately.
And eventually sold $2 million worth of books.
From a dead academic text. That is the staggering difference between appealing to the intellect and appealing to the acquisitive feeling.
But there's a nuance here we need to cover. You can't just scream emotions at people. You still need them to read the very first line.
Right, we talked about not yelling fire, but you do need some kind of hook.
And this brings us to the news principle. Collier points out that human beings are deeply obsessed with news. We always have been.
I think we're even worse now. We doom scroll for news 24/7.
It's the exact same mechanism. We want to know what's happening. So Collier says if your product isn't news, and let's be honest, most products aren't, you have to invent a news angle.
You have to create a curiosity gap.
Yes. And the masterclass in this was his campaign for O. Henry's short stories.
Oh, these are my favorites from the whole book.
They're so good.
So O. Henry wrote these stories with twist endings. But you can't just put an ad out saying, buy these nice stories. You have to make it news. You have to make it a mystery.
Read some of the headlines they use. They are absolute gold.
Okay, here's one. When the rattlesnake struck.
Incredible.
Will a yellow king rule the world?
So dramatic.
Yeah.
And my personal favorite. What is the unpardonable sin in all nature?
I mean, you have to look. You literally cannot scroll past that.
It forces the brain to ask a question that only the text can answer. You sit there thinking, I don't know, what is the unpardonable sin? It creates an itch that you just have to scratch.
Collier also applies this to something very practical, which is the standard retail sale.
Yes, this is crucial for anyone in business today.
He says you should never just announce a price cut, like sale 20% off.
Yeah.
He says that's not news. That's desperation.
It just sounds like you're trying to get rid of junk nobody wants.
So how do you make a discount into news?
You give a compelling reason. You frame it as an event. The Gold Star Guildhall is brilliant here.
Right. This was for a set of Oliver Cromwell's works.
Yes. He didn't just say price drop. He said we need to clear space in the stockroom for spring inventory.
Which is a perfectly logical reason.
And they added the real hook.
Yeah.
He said some of the sets were slightly damaged.
Slightly damaged. Now, wouldn't that scare people off normally?
You would think so. But listen to how he framed the damage. He said the damage was so slight that an ordinary person wouldn't even notice. But because they couldn't be sold as perfect, he was offering them to true book lovers who cared about the content and not the binding.
That is just devious.
It's genius.
Yeah.
It does three things at once. One, it explains the discount logically. Two, it creates extreme scarcity because there are only a few damaged sets.
And three, it flatters the buyer.
Exactly. You are a true intellectual who cares about the words, not a superficial cover.
It turns buying damaged goods into joining an exclusive club.
Precisely.
Okay, so we've hooked them with news, we've tapped into their primary emotion, but now we need to make them actually see what we're offering. Which brings us to word pictures.
Collier believed the mind thinks entirely in images, not words. If I say apple, you don't visualize the letters A-P-P-L-E. You see a red, shiny fruit.
So the goal of the copy is to plant that image.
He uses a construction analogy for this. You can't start building a house with a roof. You have to pour the foundation, then put up the walls. You have to guide the reader's imagination piece by piece.
And the examples he uses to explain this, I have to say, the British ad copy from this era is on a whole other level.
It's incredibly evocative.
He quotes an ad for bacon. Listen to this. Mellowed in the suave smoke of certain rare woods, from which passers-by give savage cries and raven at the railings.
Raven at the railings. It's so gloriously over the top, but you can practically smell that smoke, can't you?
But the cheese one has to be my favorite. He's comparing traditional farmhouse Stilton to factory-made cheese. And he doesn't just say factory cheese is bad, he paints a whole picture.
Read the description of the factory. It's basically a scathing social critique disguised as a cheese ad.
He writes that the factory cheese is made in a great barn of a factory by pale youths who cycle madly to the cinema when the day's work is done.
Pale youths cycling madly to the cinema. It's so specific.
It really is.
He's not just selling cheese there. He is selling a worldview. He's asking the reader, do you want the cheese made by these soulless, modern, cinema-obsessed kids? Or do you want the cheese made by the old masters?
The real farmhouse Stiltons.
It creates what the text literally calls a more-ish feeling, like you just want more of it. And he does this with simple metaphors, too. You don't need a whole paragraph to describe a skinny man.
No, he uses the Sleepy Hollow description of Ichabod Crane.
Hands that dangled a mile out of his sleeves.
Boom, you see it instantly.
That's the sheer power of a word picture. It completely bypasses the analytical brain. You don't sit and argue with a picture. You just experience it.
So we've got the bait, we have the emotion, the news hook, and the visualization. But I want to see how these all come together in one major campaign. And Collier saves the best for last. The war histories.
This really is the crescendo of the book, the campaign for Simon's History of the World War.
And just for context, this is right after World War I. They are trying to sell a comprehensive history of the conflict. And just to be clear for everyone listening, we are purely analyzing the persuasion tactics here. We aren't taking any stance on the historical events themselves.
Absolutely. We're just looking at how the publisher sold the books, and once again we see the stark split between the intellectual approach and the emotional approach.
The early ads were very respectable, very much the sportsman from our fishing analogy. They relied heavily on social proof.
Things like colleges study this history.
Or Yale University has ordered 400 copies.
Which, to be fair, is impressive. The logic is if Yale buys it, it must be accurate.
It proves it's a serious work.
Yeah.
But it's incredibly dry. It appeals to your sense of duty. I should read this because Yale does.
But nobody buys a massive set of books just because they feel like they should.
So then they switch gears. Ad number 7, The Coming of the Yanks.
This ad is a masterclass in narrative. It doesn't describe the physical book at all. It tells a visceral story.
It sets the scene. It describes the French retreating. The mood is dark. The hospital is moving back. The outlook is grim. You can feel the despair of the moment.
Put you right in the trench. You aren't a reader anymore. You are a soldier. And then comes the pivot, the sound of martial music. The Yanks are coming.
And the description of the fighting that follows, it's incredibly visceral. It says they charged the machine guns and were choking gunners with bare hands.
Choking gunners with bare hands. Compare the emotional weight of that to Yale bought 400 copies.
It's night and day.
One is a sterile statistic. The other's a raw experience. It appeals to national pride, to the thrill of victory, to the intense reality of life and death.
And that ad sold thousands of sets.
Because it turned the product into a vehicle for deep emotion. The book wasn't paper and ink anymore. It was a way for the reader to personally relive that glory and that relief.
So bringing this all back to our deep dive today, we've covered the fishing analogy, the speeding train, the curiosity headlines, the word pictures. What is the big overarching takeaway here? Because this feels like a lot more than just a manual on how to write an ad.
I think it really comes down to Collier's core philosophy about human nature. At the end, he uses an analogy about an automobile.
Okay, lay it on me.
He says a human being is very much like a car. It has a massive amount of potential energy. But a car needs fuel to move. And for us, that fuel is desire.
Desire.
Think about it. You can try to push a car from behind. That represents logic, arguments, nagging. You should buy this, you should do this. But pushing a car is heavy, exhausting work.
And usually the car doesn't go very far at all.
But if you can ignite the fuel inside,
if you can spark that internal desire, the car essentially moves itself.
that is what true persuasion is. It isn't manipulation. It isn't tricking people into doing things they hate. It's finding out what the person actually wants deep down. Whether it's pride security, some tasty farmhouse cheese, or just a desire to understand the universe.
And showing them how your idea helps them get exactly that.
Exactly. You are just highlighting the track that their speeding train was already on.
That's a huge perspective shift. It's not about getting them to do what you want. It's about connecting what you want with what they already desire.
Precisely.
So here is a final provocative thought for everyone listening to mull over today. Look at the last request you made. Maybe it was an email you sent, a pitch you gave, or even just asking your partner to do the dishes.
Don't yell fire. Don't just list the specifications of the dishwasher.
Exactly. Ask yourself, what is the conversation they are already having in their head right now? And what bait are they actually hungry for?
Because if you can answer that, you will never be the sportsman standing on the bank with an empty line again.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We will catch you on the next one.